The first statement that the White House put out today, this morning, about this video was from the White House press secretary, where she said this was fake outrage, faux outrage, and that all the president did was repost a video, a meme video that depicted him as the king of the jungle and some Democrats as characters from The Lion King. There is not one ape in The Lion King. Not one ape. There's a baboon, Rafiki, but there are no apes in The Lion King. So the reality of the situation is that the trope of depicting black people as animals, close to apes, actually did not start as an insult nor as a joke. It started as justification for the rape and pillage and enslavement of African people on the continent. You can literally, the continent of Africa, you can literally look it up. And it was what the white Europeans perfected that the Americans used to justify chattel slavery. Take that all the way up to the civil rights movement. Again, the trope reappeared to justify why black people in this country shouldn't vote. And there's a direct line from what the white Europeans cooked up in the 1700s to this particular White House that now seems to deem anyone who is not a straight white man a DEI hire and not there because of merit. So know your history. Yes, this is in fact a distraction. That don't mean we're not going to address it, though, because it is Black History Month. Only 6 days in, damn it. Y'all need to pull it together.
Well, not too much more to say after that, because it is a perfect summation, Professor, of where the country finds itself right now. My take on this today was really a hard one, because this is what Donald Trump thinks of black people.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate the history lesson. I appreciate the connection, because it's very important. But at the end of the day, this is what this man, as President of the United States, thinks of black people, irrespective of their title, position, their accomplishments, their successes, their failures, who they are, who they aren't. You are black, and that's enough for me. His history, his first public discourse on the subject of race occurred in 1973-74 when he was sued by the Department of Justice for discriminating. Why? Because he didn't want black people to live in the apartments that his name was on. So this, for me, is just a continuation of the Donald Trump story that many of us have been trying to get both black and whites inside the party to understand and stop shilling for this person the way you have. Because guess what? You own this thing now, too. You own this. So it's great people coming out today, Professor, and saying, this is the most racist. Oh, my God. Where were you when there were shithole countries? Where were you when there was talking about black people and black women in particular, calling them piggies, calling them names? Where were you then?
I don't believe this is the most racist thing Tim Scott's heard in the White House. Okay.
Thank you.
I mean, that's just the first thing. I don't believe that. I don't believe that's the worst thing. I have been to South Carolina. I know some of the things that are said in this White House. I don't think it's the most racist thing Donald Trump has ever said. We still don't know what might be on the cutting room floor from The Apprentice, but I have heard stories because I've talked to people who actually worked on The Apprentice. So none of this ever shocks me. It also, because it's Black History Month, and because of the Epstein files, and because of the economy, I don't allow him to elicit my outrage.
There you go.
Because I'm infinitely more disgusted that this man is bankrupting people. I am infinitely more disgusted that this man is taking away health care. I am infinitely more disgusted that this guy does not care about the fact that he socialized with alleged child rapists and molesters for years and years and years. This is just part and parcel of what Donald Trump has always been. And I'm also never impressed by Republicans who now, when the heat is finally hitting them about ICE, about the economy, about everything else, now they can suddenly say, well, I guess we can sort of admit he's racist. He's always been racist. That's not new.
It's not new.
And I can pat my head and rub my tummy, and I don't have to be able to look at his racism and have that distract from the other ways that he is destroying this country.
Well, it's not new, and it's not just in the language or in the rhetoric. It's also steeped so deeply into the policies of this administration. I mean, I think back to the way Donald Trump originally came to power with birtherism, which, yes, is fundamentally racist, but is also this questioning about who is deserving of being American, who is considered legitimate in their American identity and in their power as American. And there is an absolute through line there to his attacks on voting, to his attacks on the 14th Amendment, to what we are watching play out in Minneapolis and all across this country as his deportation force goes into American cities and is in many cases taking American citizens and detaining them because the Supreme Court of the United States has condoned racial profiling. So, Michelle, draw for me a line from what we are hearing from this White House and what they're actually doing.
Well, and I think, to bring it back to Minneapolis, I mean, the reason that they went in there in the first place was not because there was some sort of crisis of undocumented immigrants. There are fewer undocumented people in Minnesota than in the average state in this country. They went in there because of this demonization campaign against Somalis in particular, right? And then that's also why they went into Lewiston, Maine. Lewiston, Maine, for a long time was held up as this immigration success story, a town that had been revitalized by immigration after kind of being hard on its luck after the mills closed. Again, they go specifically into Lewiston, Maine. Then there was news earlier this week. I was in Springfield, Ohio, because there was plans to go into Springfield, Ohio, a town that's been revitalized by Haitian immigrants and that's been targeted over and over by this administration. They've tried to take away TPS status for Haitians, who are here legally because they have temporary protected status. Everybody knows that Haiti is not a safe place for people to return to, and nevertheless, they've tried to claim in court that it is, that somehow the crisis there is over. So the way that they're doing mass deportation is by ethnic group, which is, there's a name for that, right? And so I just think the reason that Donald Trump is president is because he channeled white rage towards Barack Obama with his birtherism conspiracy. And it's been, not just racism, Donald Trump has also channels a lot of misogyny, but racism has been absolutely a through line in his two presidencies now. And the reason that this moment I think is interesting is that there's so much denial among Republicans who will insist that kind of Donald Trump isn't what we can all see that he is. And then every so often something happens where that denial becomes unsustainable. And they all, it happened kind of after January 6th. It's happened at a couple other moments. It never lasts. But there's always this moment where you can see him clearly, and even they have to somehow respond to, the obscenity of having this man in the White House.
Yeah, you want to chime in, Jason?
I also want to add that, let's be clear about everybody who's responsible for this, right? It's not just that you have white Americans who are racist, whatever, but Republicans, they can't sell their racism without the active participation of black and brown people, okay? We can look at Candace Owens, okay? We can look at some of the things that Byron Donald has excused. We can look at some of the things Tim Scott has excused. Nick Fuentes, Enrique Tarrio, the head of the Proud Boys, they can't even sell racism without black and brown people helping them, and that's part of the problem. So again, I think it's important for us to highlight what Donald Trump has always been. But we have to make sure that we look at racism and systematic racism and white supremacy and all these sorts of things as a group project. And it gets really lazy if we just say it's Trump and his administration. Right. There are lots of people participating in this kind of problem. And that's what I think America needs to understand. Because as long as we just think it's him being a bad outlier and it's his party sort of protecting him, we forget about the fact that this is a pervasive problem, whether you're looking at ICE, whether you're looking at policing, whether you're looking at the Department of Justice or anything else like that. It is a larger issue than just one bad president. He is a symptom, not necessarily the cause of these problems.
Well, the problem is in America, we have never truly reckoned with how this country came to be in the first place. And so when we discuss white supremacy, we don't talk about it as an ideology, but that is in fact what it is. And because it's an ideology, black people can be white supremacists. Come on now. Just like women can be sexist. Right? Because there's a belief in the patriarchy. There's an ideology. There's an infrastructure there. But I don't want to get too analytical tonight. I will just say that
you pride yourself on being analytical, and we live for it, Simone Sanders Townsend. On tonight of all nights, I want to hear that analysis. And I just want to tell you, I'm not sure where this happened. One of our producers jumped in my ear. The President of the United States was just asked about this by several reporters at the White House, and he dodged all of those questions, Simone.
Because there's no good... Because the actual answer is, you didn't think it was funny? Of course, this is what I think. Let's move on. Why is this a big deal for you? That's the actual answer, because that's the truth of who he is. But it's just a little too untoward given the outrage from every little corner of the political spectrum today for him to say that. But there's one thing about this president. He has been wildly consistent in who he is. And so maybe I think the issue that Jason Johnson and the chairman are raising here is that there are a number of people that have yet to reckon that not only did they excuse the president's racism and sexism, right, and his love of white supremacist ideology, because that is in fact what the Great Replacement theory is rooted in. Okay, this idea that now the Republicans are saying Democrats are shipping in, they're letting in all of these brown people to vote for them, and they're trying to replace us. So we have to send them back to where they're from. That's what Stephen Miller's saying. That is white supremacist ideology. But if we call it that and we say that, then there's a lot of people that think that they're good and moderate and the good guys, okay, and that are just waiting until Donald Trump is out of here, and then we're going to go back to how it was. There are a lot of people that then need to reckon with they themselves, okay? So I don't know if the people are going to do their work. I will just say the Epstein files ain't going anywhere.
They're not. Yeah, the Epstein files aren't going anywhere, and we will continue to talk about them because the victims of the Epstein files deserve this moment more so than Donald Trump wants them to have it. Michelle, you know, I don't want to mix apples and oranges here, but there are you really laid out the through line argument and narrative around how all this comes together. Let me ask you this, and I'm not trying to put a lot on you as a woman, as a white woman, nothing like that. I just, as an American, as you step back and look at this, how do you see America receiving this moment? How do you think this lands? We have outrage and notes from people who have profile and so forth, but someone at the kitchen table tonight, are they talking about this? Is this something? Because my suspicions is this may not land as deeply as we would like it to, and that there may be more people who take comfort and may even laugh at it and think it's, you know, it's a humorous way, and Black History Month was always a waste to begin with.
Well, I think that probably a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump feel that way. And you can see in a certain way this kind of post as fan service towards a certain part of his base. I mean, I do think it has clearly landed enough that the White House has felt like it had to respond, right? They felt like they had to back off. They felt like they had to blame it on some mysterious staffer who goes on kind of posting sprees from the president's account in the middle of the night, which if somebody's authorized to do that, we should probably know about it. But, you know, look, this is a very, very unpopular president. I think that this has clearly broken through. It's why so many Republicans felt like they had to respond, like they had to denounce him, even if, you know, now some of them are already walking back their denunciations or saying there's nothing to see here. But again, I think it was one of those moments, and there are these moments from time to time when the veil drops and the sort of lies that people have to tell themselves to justify this kind of kamikaze presidency become insupportable.
Yes. My final word on this, Alicia, is straightforward to the camera, to the American people. When we elect a representative, a president, they are an extension of who we are. Tonight, I have to ask you, is this who we are? Because this is who our president is.